If you're in the market for a 35 to 40 foot sailboat for the family, for weekend sailing, occasional longer trips, some coastal waters perhaps, maybe some island hopping or Chesapeake anchorages, there are a lot of boats that fit that bill. Today we're going to talk about the big hitters, the ones that you see everywhere, like the Dufour 40, the Legend 45, Island Packet 35, Hunter 386, and Beneteau 373. And we're going to talk about why, when people consider these boats, more often than not, they end up buying the Catalina 380. Why is that? Stick around to the end because I talked to a bunch of owners of these boats, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows. My name's Tim. You may know me from my YouTube channel, Lady K Sailing, where my mission is to help more people go sailing more easily. Since I was a kid, I've loved Practical Sailor magazine, each new edition making me feel like it's Christmas morning. The writers and editors of Practical Sailor help people go sailing too, with good seamanship, safety, and top-notch boat projects and buy, don't buy gear recommendations. I've always loved it, and I am more than honored to be here now as the newly installed editor-in-chief. You heard that right. These are big shoes to fill, but Practical Sailor's Belvoir Media Group decided a step forward into the digital world would be an important way forward for a publication that's been helping sailors since 1975. With Practical Sailor's new format, you'll get more boat reviews, strong original and practical content, video interviews with experts, and immediate access to Practical Sailor's trove of solid ratings and reviews. But one thing won't change though. Practical Sailor has always been on a mission to save you money, save you time, and save you from the troubled waters that are sometimes out there. You'll hear more about the new Practical Sailor in the days and weeks ahead. Right now, though, we're going to kick things off with a review of one of the most amazing 38-foot cruising boats ever designed, the Catalina 380. Who knew that you could fit a sugar scoop transom and an island bed in an aft cabin in a conventional cockpit sloop? But first, let's meet the competition. The Dufour 40. Dufour is one of the French manufacturers, and they've been making boats since 1964. And this 40-footer is a culmination of all of that experience and know-how put into a performance-oriented cruising boat. They started making them in 2005, and of all the boats we're looking at today, this 40 is by far the fastest. If you're a club racer, she boasts a PHRF rating of 83. She is quick. But she's also spacious and accommodating with near 13 feet of beam. And at 17,000 pounds, she's all too happy to be out there under a reef in 25 knots or in no wind at all, trudging along very reliably with her 55 horsepower Volvo. We were able to find this 40-footer in reasonable shape for sale for about $100,000, which makes it not only the fastest boat on the list today, but also the most expensive. And here's the other rub. You're not going to love sleeping in it. The arrangements below leave you with the feeling that Dufour expected more of a tight quarters racing crew to be on board, not a small family. So if you had to call any space in this boat the master stateroom, it would have to be the V-berth. On a 40-footer, and the teak side decks on a near 20-year-old boat mean these are all about due for some work, and hopefully it's not deck core work. The next boat that always comes up in this genre of sub-$100,000 boats is the Legend 40.5. This is made by Hunter, but it has a backstay, and that's because it's a legend. People love these boats, and the owners groups here are rock solid and chock full of helpful owners ready to share their wisdom. You won't be alone on a boat like this. With an LOA of 40.42 feet, she's the biggest boat in our list today, and at 20,000 pounds, she's also the heaviest. But because of her age, 1991 to 97, she's also the cheapest, coming in at around $75,000. While the Dufour left us with just a V-berth to call home, the Legend gives us the aft cabin we deserve if we're going to go and learn how to park a 40-footer. And parking should be relatively easy because these boats all came with either a Volvo or a Yanmar to get us along. And speaking of getting along, racers love these boats. They are quick around the marks and they love to cut up into the wind, PHRF 108. But the Legend tends to fall down a little bit in a few places. Being a 90s boat, there are some things to look for. For example, they had aluminum waste tanks that hopefully by now the previous owner replaced. They didn't age well. The interior fit and finish on these isn't quite as nice as the competition, and frankly, they're just getting old now. They're harder to finance and harder to insure. And speaking of getting old now, the time-honored and ocean-rated Island Packet 35. If you can spell the word sailboat, you know the name Island Packet. Ocean-going, full keel, overbuilt, words all synonymous with the brand. And the 35 is beloved by a solid near cult following owners group. You're not just buying a boat here, you're buying into the IP family. And that can be a pretty big selling point. We found the IP35 for around 85 grand, and that can be a lot for the smallest boat on our list, which also happens to be the oldest. They made these from 1988 to 1994, and to still be fetching near 100 grand is a testament to the longevity of these boats. At 17,500 pounds, they're plenty heavy to do the ocean work or keep your family safe in a blow. That's what Island Packet does. The full keel means by far the most comfortable boat on our list, especially for those who get a little queasy on a heel. Island Packet has been doing this by modern standards, narrow 12-foot beam, but full keel, heavy as a battle axe style of boat for a long time, and they do it very, very well. They even gave every one of them a Yanmar to make sure that you would have the last word in reliability. But as we know, all boats are a compromise, and Island Packet is the poster example of compromise. For starters, with that full keel, maximum wetted surface, it might be very comfortable, but it does tend to be slow, and much less likely to point high enough to reduce the number of tacks you need to take to get where you're going. By far and away, though, the problem with this boat is glaring as soon as you start researching it. Chain plates. This was back in the 80s and 90s when Island Packet was using 304 stainless steel and embedding the chain plates in the glasswork, which caused heavy corrosion and premature chain plate failure. Not a good thing for an ocean-going sailboat. Hopefully the one you're looking at has already had her chain plates redone, or the price comes down the $18,000 it costs to have it done. With brand new chain plates, it would be a solid choice, but as a heavy, narrow boat, the other compromise is the interior, and the size of this 35-footer really rings true in here. The place you'll be sleeping, a very tight aft berth you can only access from the end. While I have you guys, could you take a second and give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button and the little bell so you don't miss anything. We'll be making practical sailor videos every week with boat tours and reviews and gear comparisons. Please also leave a comment below letting us know what you'd like us to cover. One of the most popular boats you'll see in this class is the Hunter 386, and as comfort goes, it's hard to beat. At 16,000 pounds, it's relatively light for this group of boats, but still heavy enough to do some coastal cruising and island hopping. They always give you a Yanmar too, and the 12.5-foot beam with very generous freeboard makes one of the most livable interiors you're going to find on a boat. The 386 is from the 380 family of Hunters, and people love them as floating condos, frequently anchoring out for days and nights. This is a very livable boat for weekends and extended trips, and they even give you a reasonable master stateroom with the sideways bed in the back. But where this boat falls short for some people is in the sailing department. While they sail just fine, this is the Hunter with the B&R rig that didn't have a backstay. Instead, the mast is supported aft by raked back spreaders and extra stays, even support poles on the deck with some of them. And while you can pick these up for around 80,000, if you live somewhere that you have to take the mast down for the off season, all the added rigging complication may mean having to have it done professionally. And if you're the kind of sailor that is endlessly trimming to get every decimal point of a knot out of the boat, this rig may get on your nerves. You can't run the boom dead downwind because it'll hit the stays. And the mainsail is massive compared to the jib. So if you want the boat to sail at all, you have to put the main up, which we don't always like to do. Those 4 boats are all good options with their own pros and cons, but the boat that most closely competes with our Catalina 380 today is likely this next one, the Beneteau 373. These are relatively the same price as the Catalina at around $80,000. They're trimmed out almost the same. They have the same beam. They're kind of the same tool for the same job. But that's where the similarities end. The Catalina 380 is a full 1.5 feet longer than the Beneteau 373, and I think I know what they did with that 1.5 feet. While the aft cabin on the 373 is adequate, whoever gets in first better not need the restroom in the middle of the night because they can't get back out without climbing over their spouse. Catalina, on the other hand, put the bed in line with the boat so you can get out both sides. Clever. The Beneteau is spry at 14,000 pounds. She's light and performs well in light air. She's quick around the marks and a lot of fun to sail, but the Catalina is almost in a different class. This is likely the most important difference between these boats, between the Catalina 380 and all of its competition. The Catalina is a full 5,000 pounds heavier at 19,000 pounds before you add water and anchors and all your gear. The Catalina is going to tip 20,000 pounds, which means more comfortable sailing, more capable in a squall or big waters. When you're halfway across the Gulf Stream from Florida and things get scary, you're going to wish you bought the Catalina. But the Beneteau is newer. They made them from 2004 on, while the Catalina will be a little older and harder to finance and insure. It's about 7 years older. And the Beneteau always gave us a Yanmar, while Catalina started out with a Westerbeek, switching over to Yanmar in the later years. I spoke to a whole bunch of Catalina 3 owners this week, and here's what I found out. Most of these owners shopped around a lot. They even had spreadsheets to compare different models, pros and cons, resale values, and capsize ratios. I found that Catalina owners are pretty smart people. They're careful, but they're all proper sailors. One couple, Phil and Kay, live aboard their 380 with their 19-year-old cat. They're down in the Keys. Lind and Blue used to have an Oceanus 381 and a Beneteau 423, but now they have a 380. They're up on the Great Lakes, kitting theirs out to the max to go on a huge adventure. Over 1,000 watts of solar. I love it. Or people like Marty down in South Carolina, who's had Catalinas his whole life. The 25, the 27, and the 30 now has a 380. The general consensus was the same with everybody. They love this boat. Of course they do. They have one. It was better than anything else that they looked at. They loved the cockpit layout, the interior space, the galley, the massive saloon. And they adore the aft cabin island bed. They love the overweight build of the boat, usually not bothering to reef until well beyond 20 knots. Marty in South Carolina is 6'4" and never hits his head. His grown son is tall too and actually loves sleeping in the V-berth, which may seem weird, but the V-berth on the 380 is massive. The 380 sports a separate shower in the head, which is crazy for a 38-footer, and engine access? You get the typical under the stairs arrangement, but also full access from the aft cabin. But as with any boat, there were some complaints. When you're in that Queen Island bed in the back, the headroom is very low because the steering gear is all in the middle. In the galley, there's nowhere to put the pots and pans. More storage would have been nice. The main sheet arrangement up on top is adjustable from both port and starboard, and it gets really awkward. Most owners just put a stopper knot on one side and adjust it from the other. The interior space, which is massive, means the coach top is bigger than that of the Beneteau, and on the Catalina it's curved, making it a little harder and awkward to get up to the bow quickly. The cockpit table cables that support it always break, and they cost $65 to repair. It's a constant problem. Most folks wish the shelves in the main saloon were cabinets instead, so their stuff doesn't come flying out when the going gets rough. But the biggest complaint by far was from the early owners, all saying the same thing. I wish it had a Yanmar. These early boats had a Westerbeek, and on Phil and Kay's boat, it caused some big problems. When they were leaving Fort Lauderdale, they saw white smoke, and they got very low power from the big red diesel. It had about 2,500 hours at the time, and suddenly had no compression on cylinder 4. They managed to limp it all the way to the mechanic, which is crazy. It's a great story. It was over 100 nautical miles. We'll have to tell that sometime. It turned out to be a broken valve. Their mechanic was thankful for the great engine access as they rebuilt the engine, but the horror stories that we heard there about the 90s Westerbeeks are kind of all too common. When I was writing the script for this article, I noticed Microsoft Office doesn't recognize the word Westerbeek. And when you right-click on it, the suggested spelling was wastebasket. Westerbeek would go on to buy Universal and make a whole series of engines that we need to talk about later. But for now, it seems the Catalina 380 owner's single greatest wish was for a Yanmar, which later boats got anyway. If you're in the market for a 35 to 40 footer for under $100,000, you too might be making spreadsheets and trying to find, as sailors do, the most bang for the buck. And the Catalina 380 quickly rises to the top of the pile. And if, after weighing all the pros and cons of all the boats, and if all things are equal, it might just come down to that bed. And that's a good enough reason for this sailor. To see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. Check out the decades of helpful articles on the Practical Sailor website. If you want to chat, leave a comment, and also check us out on the Practical Sailor Facebook page. If you found this video helpful, we'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up and leave a comment below telling us what you thought or what the next video should be about. We'd love to hear from you, and my boss promised to read every comment on this video. Also, we're hiring writers for Practical Sailor too, particularly expert-level writers on boat reviews, electronics, sails and rigging, engines, boat maintenance, gear and apparel, galley products, and destinations. Industry experts like marine techs, diesel, surveyors, delivery captains, but any sailor with specific experience that can write should be able to make great content. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested in working for Practical Sailor.